Hello, and welcome to another live chapter reading of King of Pain by Donna S. Frelick, as presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. I guess I'm always hoping that you'll end this reign, but it's my destiny to be the King of Pain. By the Police. Prologue. The snow was deep on the shoulder of the mountain, a wide, unbroken sea of white swept by an icy wind, and Trevor was tired. So tired. He lifted his leaden legs, one after the other, to keep from drowning under those endless waves of frigid cold. He had fallen behind, again, and his father and brother refused to wait for him. In the distance, they looked like fluttering black crows against an empty slope. The blood fever of the hunt was on Kylan Dar, and no one dared slow him down when he was in this mood. Especially not his youngest son. Trevor's older brother, Kinyan, nearly as bloodthirsty as his sire, had no trouble keeping up. The wind howled across the snow field like a living thing. It bit at Trevor's face and froze the tears that leaked from beneath his goggles. He tugged his hood down over his brow and trudged on, looking only at his snowshoe-bound feet. Until up ahead, his father stopped. Trevin raised his head and doubled his efforts to catch up. There, you see, Kylan was kneeling in the snow, pointing at the track of a paw the size of his hand. The trail led off toward a stand of tall nurek trees at the edge of the snow field. Kylan stood and inclined his head in that direction. He'll be hiding in those woods. Then we have him, right, Fa? Kinyan grinned with anticipation. He will not be easy to kill, even so, their father warned, checking his Lay's rifle. Make sure your weapon is on the proper setting. Kinyan did as he was told. Trevin carried nothing but his knife. He was too young for a Lay's rifle. Trevin tried to hide his flinch as Kylan turned to him with a look of disgust that he could read despite the scarf that covered most of his father's face. You, stay out of the way for now. I don't want to have to haul your bloody carcass back to your Vrima because you were careless at a crucial moment. Yes, sir. He said the words, and he didn't mumble. Anything less would have earned him a beating. On our mind link only from now on, Kylan ordered as he began following the tracks toward the trees. We need to be silent. The snowcat is smart as he is vicious. Trevor shivered, his thin body shaking with more than just the cold. He pushed himself to follow behind his father and brother, but only because he feared being left out on the bleak mountain by himself. He had no heart for the hunt. His blood did not burn to kill any creature, no matter how well armed with tooth and claw. He'd seen what a Lay's rifle could do, even on the lower settings, searing through flesh to shock the vital organs. Kinyan delighted in killing small things with it and always made sure to show off his handiwork to his queasy younger brother. It was far too late to turn back now. His Fa had insisted he be part of this, even though his Brahma had objected he was too young at 6 circuits to be included. Kylan had responded that Trevor was too sensitive and weak in spirit. Trevor didn't know what that meant. He only knew he didn't want to disappoint his father. Again. But he couldn't grow longer legs in the space of an afternoon. His father and brother outpaced him quickly and disappeared into the copse. He pushed on, following their tracks until the trees surrounded him. It was quiet among the trees, silent and still. The wind that whistled out on the snowfield barely moved the high branches of the forest. Trevor stopped to listen, but he couldn't hear his father or brother. Then a sound of cracking leaves and snapping twigs, something moving fast through the brush to his right. He heard, no, felt, his father's triumph along the mine link as the Lay's rifle whined. An agonized howl pierced the air as the snowcat's body crashed to the clearing where Trevor stood and tumbled to the forest floor in front of him. There, the beast lay unmoving, eyes glazed but still breathing in shallow pants. Kylan Dar ran into the clearing, shouting, "Got him! By Portal's balls! Did you see that shot, boy?" Trevin, rigid with shock, could not answer him, but behind him, Kinian was quick enough to speak. "Well done, Fa! I shot him and missed. He was so fast!" Kinian sidled closer to the cat, staying out of reach of its claws. "Is he dead?" "Not yet," Kylan answered. He turned to Trevin. "Get out your knife." Trevin started to say no, though he never said the word to his father. He knew better than to ask why, too. He withdrew the blade from the sheath at his belt, his hands trembling. His father loomed over him, glaring. Kylan was on the edge of fury. Trevin could feel it through their link. His bloodlust had not been eased by the shot with the Lay's rifle. He was still in a blind killing fever, and all that horrible rage could so easily fall on Trevin's head. He held out the knife to Kylan, willing his hands to be still. "No." Kylan pointed to the snowcat. "Finish him. One deep thrust below the ear at the jawline." Kinian protested. "But Fa, you're going to let that baby make the kill? Please, Fa, let me do it." Kylan backhanded his oldest son across the cheek, knocking him to his knees. "Be silent! Your brother needs to show me he is no puling coward clinging to his Rama's skirts." He pushed Trevin toward the cat sprawled out on the snow. "Do as I say." Trevin gripped the knife in one gloved hand and crept closer to the beast. The cat lay as it had fallen, stunned by the Lay's fire into immobility. But what if it leapt up from the ground and grabbed him by the throat? Trevin couldn't control his shivering. "For Portal's sake, you useless cretin, end it!" His father took a step toward him, and the threat of the big man's fist sent Trevin scrambling to his knees by the cat's head. He stretched out a hand to touch the animal's thick white fur, marbled with dark gray, the color of clouds laden with snow. And as his fingers made contact, images slammed into his mind. A home deep in the uncharted woods, a woman that could have been his own Vrama, with a gentle smile and kind eyes, children laughing around a fireplace. But that wasn't all. Trevin felt the creature's sadness, too. His regret at failing his family, at leaving them all alone in the harsh winter. His love for them, a love so deep even a boy as young as Trevin could perceive it. He gasped with pain and astonishment, drawing back his hand. This made no sense. How could an animal have such thoughts, such feelings? And above all, how could anyone kill such a creature? He whirled to look at his father, but Kylan only nodded. "You see, do you? Why we hunt the snowcats, why we mask our scents as we hunt, and why he is so hard to find and kill. Why this trophy is prized over all others among the Thrain." Trevin tried to stand, to run, but Kylan was on him before he could move. His father closed his fist around Trevin's knife and plunged it deep in the creature's neck, just below the tufted ear. Blood spurted, hot and red, over their joined hands, and the cat growled low, shuddering as his life flowed out onto the ground. To Trevin, it seemed his father held him in place forever, forcing him to watch as the cat gave up his fight. But it couldn't have been more than a few heartbeats before the cat breathed his last. Trevin could tell when the end came. It's easy to feel when a thing no longer lives. Kylan let go of him, and Trevin crawled away to be violently sick in a nearby snowbank. When he had finished retching, he raised his tear-stained face to face his father, staring at him with something close to hatred in his black eyes. "If I didn't know your Vrama's every thought," Kylan said, his voice a threatening growl, "if our bond didn't reveal her deepest secrets to me, whether she wishes it to or not, I would never believe you could be my son." He turned away then, and he and Kinian set about the task of cutting away the great cat's pelt, head, and paws as trophies of the hunt. Trevin was left to shiver in his misery in the snow. For a long while he did nothing but bury his head in his arms and give in to his lonely grief. It didn't seem to matter now if he cried. His father had already cast him out of the circle of his approval. Not that he had ever really been inside that tiny space for more than an instant of time. With the long hunt through the snow and the emotional trauma of the kill, Trevin was exhausted. He drifted off for a time, despite the cold, and woke with a start, his heart pounding. His father and brother still carved away on the carcass, talking and laughing over the bloody work, ignoring him. But something had changed in the surrounding forest. Trevor could feel it. There was no sound but the sighing of the wind in the treetops. Nothing to see but the lengthening shadows of late afternoon. Still, the silence echoed with dark energy, as though the monsters of Kinion's cruel bedtime stories watched from the edge of the woods. At first, he thought he was imagining it. The small, pale face staring at him from a turo thicket not 5 paces away. His mouth opened in astonishment and fear, and his head swiveled from the thicket to his father and brother in the clearing, hesitating. The face disappeared, but it seemed the evergreen branches of the spreading turo moved just slightly. If he shouted a warning, and there was nothing in the thicket but a hare, Kylan would beat him for interrupting his work. Even worse, Kinion would never let him forget it. So he said nothing, but sat quietly watching. Soon enough, the face appeared again. Golden eyes, the same color as the cat's, flicking from Trevin to the gruesome butchery in the clearing. The cub, a young cat no older than he himself, Trevin could see now, watched for a long, torturous moment. Her lip lifted in a silent snarl. Then she looked back at him, and the expression in her intelligent eyes was not one of sadness or horror. Before she turned to flee into the forest, Trevin could feel the daughter of the slain snowcat curse him with a bottomless, fiery hatred. Chapter 1. Leo Sephora studied the readout on her nav screen for the 3rd time in a hand and cursed. She was being followed. The ship trailed behind her at a discreet distance, too far to be identified. So far that it had taken her a full ship's sun to be certain. But now she was sure. The anomaly had stayed at the very edge of the sensor range, no matter what course changes she made. Leo's pulse quickened in response to the threat, even though it was still light years away. Her mission was too important. The food and medical supplies she carried in the cargo containers strung out behind her little space tug were too vital to the cause. Not to mention the weapons tucked away in their hidden storage lockers in the hull of the Good Fortune. And she had to be careful. Sassless. It simply wasn't possible that the fucking Onlys had followed her from Paradon. The ships tracking her could be captained by pirates, of course. This sector of space was no one's territory. Minorstan, Confederate systems, Thrain, or any other. So the bloodthirsty were free to prey on the foolish at will. She had known that when she chose the route, and she had armed her tug accordingly. This wasn't her first time out, after all. But a pirate would have caught up to her long ago. Blackjacks didn't waste time playing the long game. This ship was slower, patient, relentless. Like its captain had all the time in the galaxy. What the hell does he want? Leo had precious little fuel to spare, but she bumped the ion inches another decimal away. With luck, the following ship's crew would be nodding at the helm, and missed that she was gradually pulling away. The F2 jump node at Magus 4 was within reach if she could just keep ahead of her unknown stalker. She refused to think about what might happen if she failed to make that jump. The people waiting for her on the Thrain needed what was stowed on her hold. Leo would fight to defend this cargo, but she could only afford to fight if the cargo could be secured. Until she came within range of the Magus system, she and her ungainly train of cargo containers were a line of cud-chewing phosphorus. There was no place here in the void of black space for her to hide the pods and turn to fight. Sweating, she increased her speed another notch. Another hand, and Leo began to think maybe her strategy was working. The Magus system would be within sensor range any moment, and she'd managed to stay ahead of the tailing ship. Fuel for the ion engines was dangerously low, but once she switched to pulse engines for the jump, that wouldn't be an issue. She could refuel on the other side of F2 through Torpa Station, was a dump that she usually avoided. She rolled her shoulders and started making the calculations for the jump. Even with the aid of her comp, those calculations were complicated, which is why she missed the abrupt appearance of a second ship until a proximity alarm blared at her from the console. There was no time for evasion. The sleek cruiser was already within weapons range, with ion cannons fully charged and aimed for her tug's bridge. She barely got her shields up before the comm started squawking. TMS Good Fortune, this is TMS Blood's Honor. On behalf of the Interstellar Council for Abolition and Rescue, stand down and prepare to be boarded. Rescue? What the? Layla hit the comm pad with more force than might have been necessary. This is open space, Rescue. You have no authority here. The anti-slavers had no authority anywhere, really, but that never stopped them. Usually she applauded them for it. This time it was damned inconvenient. Besides, I'm carrying food and medicine, not slaves. Yes, I understand even slavers have to eat, the voice from the other ship drawled. My orders are to stop and detain you. Orders from Rescue HQ on Madras, no doubt. But this was the first Lael had heard of the Thrain merchant ship and captain working for the abolitionist organization. And who the fuck are you? She said finally. Lower your shield and invite me aboard, came the answer. I'll introduce myself properly. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Have a good night.